Ah, a crisp polar seltzer to continue my day, which has been a long one. Show not brought to you by Polar Seltzer. I am brought to you by Polar Seltzer because I'm drinking it and I always drink it. But they don't sponsor the show yet. They or a similar beverage would be perfectly aligned with my day-to-day lifestyle and beverage choices. Anyhow, I wanted to talk about the end of the season, the WNBA Finals, and everything in between. I am exhausted, full disclosure. I was at the Barclays Center until like 2 a.m. last night. Trains weren't running very frequently. So I was not home until after 3 in the morning. Basically, almost 4 in the morning, probably not asleep until 4 or 5 in the morning. So dragging a little bit today. Wow, I wish there was a double entendre like dragon, because a dragon would be like I would be coming at you. So I'm not. I'm dragging today. Anyhow, what a WNBA season, what a WNBA Finals. For those of you who don't know, I did travel to Minnesota, to Minneapolis. I was there for Game 4 in the event that the Liberty had won Game 4 to be there for the championship. Of course, they didn't. That was a great game. One note from that game is that the Target Center crowd was electric too. So something to reinforce a lot of the positives that I've spoken about. Barclays Center, 18,000 strong. The vibe that's been cultivated there is amazing. Target Center, 18,000 strong, or whatever it is. It was packed. They had a fervent fan base. So that does go to speak to the growth of the game, right? Like we can get into that. The players opted out of the CBA today. In case you didn't see that, that is no surprise. That was expected. Everyone knew that was going to happen. So it's not really news. They are going to get a better deal, and they are going to start generating more money because that media rights deal was done, which has been done, which means more money is on the way. And this season is a strong negotiating leverage point for them. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is the centerpiece for that. I wonder how much she'll actually be involved in the negotiations. But the WNBA Finals showed that the growth has gone, has been infused into the league. And some of the steps that were taken in the past, the building of an audience at Barclays, have taken effect. Like the building of a fan base at Barclays, the building of a fan base in Target Center, and then the extra fans who came in this season and said, you know what, I like this, I'm going to stick around. So all that stuff is great. But if you followed this season at all, you'll know, even amongst the positive, there has always been some level of drama. The positive, all in all, there's just like no way to take a 30,000-foot view of the WNBA season and not, look at it as an incredible smashing success. But along the way, there's been all this drama, some sort of drama around everything. And I guess it's appropriate enough that a championship couldn't be decided without there being a drama around it. And it's a shame because it was a fantastic series back and forth. I mean, Game 1 was overtime. Liberty blew the big lead. The Lynx stormed back. Game 3, Sabrina hits that shot that should live forever. Game 4 comes down to the wire, 2-point game. Game 5, overtime. But Game 5, let's focus on that for a second, because what Cheryl Reese said, and if you could go to my timeline, I posted a lot of the clips, but I wrote, I'm going to be posted up for Cheryl Reeve's press conference because I knew something was coming. And I could feel it, in my gut. When the Liberty won the championship, to the title of this, does it hit different? Yeah, I think it does. If I'm being honest, I think it hits different. And I say that as somebody who took my daughter to her first Liberty game this year, got her first jersey, loves the vibe there. I am in love with the atmosphere and the energy at Barclays for Liberty games. It is unbelievable. It is amazing. So I say all that to preface that I'm not coming from some sort of, the opposite of an axe to grind. I would have loved to have been around celebrating and capturing and being like, go New York, go Liberty. I mean, it's been so long since the championship and enhancing the legacy of the stars on the team. Like, that is what I was prepared to do. That is what I flew out to Minnesota to do. That is what I was at Barclays Center last night to do. But it didn't feel the same when that championship was won, when Empire State of Mind rang out, because the Lynx got robbed to a certain extent. They really did. I'm not one to complain about the refs generally, right? Like I like to have. There's so many different possessions in a game. There are so many different possessions in a series. There's so many different plays that can swing a series: shots, turnovers, rebounds, whatever the case may be, timeouts or lack thereof, challenges or lack thereof. So many different things can decide a series and a game. So I don't like to, focus too much on one play. But in this case, one play did swing the championship. It swung the championship. If that foul is overturned, the Lynx are the champions right now. I mean, it's simple and plain. They're up 2, waning seconds of the game. And Breanna Stewart looked like she traveled before the play, or she definitely traveled before the play if they didn't call. I can see them saying the ball was either they missed it or the ball was like hit on the catch, so she maybe didn't have it. She was gathering. So let's put the travel to the side, but she traveled, where they could have blown the whistle and called a travel, and I don't think anybody would have had an issue with that. So that's part one. Then the shot itself, in real time, I was like, oh, she must have got her on the wrist or something. But the more replays I've seen, the more it looks like she got like fingers on the ball and maybe incidental contact, marginal contact. Cheryl Reeve put it after that. And you're not generally in a press room where you hear like, oh, after something is said. And that's what I heard last night. Like, I captured Cheryl Reeve's initial answer on video because I thought that was the piece. And that's when she said they need to overhaul the process because it wasn't a foul and it decided the game and all that. And then later at the end of it, when she circled back, she said, this shit was stolen from us. And everyone goes, oh, like, because that's a quote. That's like a boom, 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 alarm bell quote. And then Sandy Brondello, the Liberty coach, was asked about it, and she kind of scoffed and said she thought it was fair, and everybody laughed. Everybody laughed, which says something in and of itself. And it was, I think the free throw disparity was 25-8, which gives you some Sacramento Kings, LA Lakers vibes. For those of you who go back that far to the Western Conference Finals, way back when, that's probably the most, circled NBA series of all time where people thought officiating played a role in the outcome. And unfortunately, officiating played a role in the outcome here. It just did. And Cheryl Reeve was right. You can think what you want. I think she was right to feel that way. I think she was right to express it. And she stole the headlines from the Liberty. They stole the game from her, the refs, in her opinion. She stole the headlines. Because today, that's what people are talking about. That's what people are talking about. Unfortunately, it's not really the Liberty. And I think even Liberty fans have to feel that some way. Because, it makes it a little tougher, too, because Breanna Stewart was not good in that game. Really not good in the series. Not good in the series. Other than game 3. And Sabrina Ionescu was 1 of 19. So you can't really celebrate the Liberty players in the midst of it. Jonquel Jones, I thought rightfully was the Finals MVP. She was tough. I thought Leonie Fibich was the next best contender, to be honest with you. I mean, Stewie impacts the game in other ways too, so I want to be fair. She's got a lot of length defensively. She made some tough plays. But you had to feel for the Lynx side of things when Nafisa Collier was the best player on the floor by far. By a mile. I mean, the Liberty are lucky that Courtney Williams was as bad as Sabrina Ionescu in this particular game. So I know there was an overtime. And the overtime, different factors could have happened, and the Lynx still had a chance. And I know there were things that happened before the end of the game, and the Lynx had a chance. However, there is no overtime if the end of the game isn't called that way. And that's where it's hard to escape. It's hard to escape because it's not like, okay, this could have been different or that could have been. The Lynx are the champions if it's called different at the end of the game. Plain and simple. And that's why they had that spirit. That's why they feel it was stolen from them. And that's why, if I'm being honest about it, the Liberty Championship don't hit the same. And it sucks. That's not something, I'm not trying to stir up controversy. It's not something I'm just telling you how I naturally felt. I felt that way in the building. I felt that way in the building. Yeah. I mean, now New York could have won game 4. It's this, we see the latest thing, and credit Sandy Brondello, good coaching, to cry about the refs herself after game 4, which may have planted the seeds for game 5. And we know Kathy Engelbert was wearing that New York dress. Look, I don't think it was rigged, guys, but it was bad enough where you have that insinuation coming, like Damian Lillard said they called the game like they got the script. Isaiah Thomas, not Zeke Isaiah Thomas, more recent Isaiah Thomas, said they low-key cheated. LeBron James says it wasn't a foul. That's not as damning an allegation. But I don't know if I've ever seen the reaction to an ending of a game and a championship that consistent and that universal and that skeptical. And it was deserved. It was deserved. The reffing's got to get better in the WNBA. And again, maybe it's appropriate that such a smashing success of a season ended with controversy. But it's also a shame in a sense, because if I'm being real about it, that Liberty Championship don't hit the same. All right, let me get to your comments. Kevin Zwicker says, a ring is a ring. Congrats, Liberty. Well, it is a ring. They will always be the champions of this year. There's no asterisk next to it in the record book. But all rings are not the same, and it's one of the reasons I think ring culture is overrated sometimes. It ignores context. We just celebrate people for the results. I don't like working results backwards, right? Like, I don't like to go to the result and then work backwards. Like, you have to build toward the result. And it's why we don't credit the ring that Dirk Nowitzki won the same as the ring Kevin Durant won with the Warriors. Or LeBron's ring with the Cavs in 2016 is greater than his ring with the Heat, right? Like, things are not always the same. We don't look and we don't lionize certain wins and achievements the way we do others. And had the Liberty just won the series outright, going away, had they kept the lead at the end when they took it in the fourth quarter, that's all you'd be hearing about. But instead, it's tough. Mr. Acosta says, Lynx has 2 points and 5 turnovers in OT, LOL, quote, stolen. Well, again, OT does not happen. That's true. But yeah, I knew the Liberty were going to win OT after it got to OT, because it's got to be so deflating if you're the Lynx to have the champion. They had it. In their minds, it's over. It's a wrap. When Cheryl Reeve challenges that, she probably thinks it's getting overturned. It's a wrap. That play, if it's not called the way it does, the Lynx are the champions today. So it was, in fact, decided on that one play. Alvin White. So after the finals, if you rank the top 5 WM players, who would they be? I was thinking about writing this tomorrow, actually. Right this moment, Nafisa Collier, number 1, I think. I think she's earned that with her playoff run. I think I'd have Collier number 1. Number 2 is tough. I'll stick with Asia off of pedigree and tenure. And I think Clark is 3. I would be very surprised if I don't have Clark number 1 by the end of next season or early in next season. She is 3 going for number 1. Number 4, I would probably have Stewart still. But, Stewart was really aided by the fact that she, gets to play with Phoebich and gets to play with Jonquel Jones and gets to play with Nafisa Collier. That fifth spot is much tougher. I had Sabrina as my fifth player on the all WNBA team. I think she had the fifth best season. So after the regular season, I would say her. After the finals, it makes it a little bit more difficult. I think you have to consider other players for that spot, whether it be Copper or whether it be Mitchell, there's a lot of players that are competing for that fifth spot, I would think. Alyssa Thomas was the other fifth team of the spot on the all WNBA team, but she can't score enough. I have to think about the fifth spot. I'm pretty solid on the top four, but I was thinking about doing that article as a season wrap up, maybe tomorrow. Then I'll have that fifth spot solidified. Let me get back to the top of the comments here. Those are the initial super chats. C-Man says, Fix was in before the game. They called Lynx travel half court before halftime. Film don't lie. That wasn't a travel. But Stewie travel, not a travel. Scott Jason said, did Kathy Engelbert only put on her outfit with the New York skyline on it for the presentation? Was she wearing it all through the game? See, that's an interesting question. I saw one instance where she was photographed in the crowd with it. So I don't know if she changed into it, like thinking the Liberty going to win, or if she was always going to wear it. I'm not sure. Because it would be one thing if they won and then she put it on and we hadn't seen her before. But there is one shot of her in the crowd where she seemed to be wearing it before. McIntosh says Liberty earned the win. Farrow says the refs gave Liberty the game. Starscream says if Game 5 has an asterisk, Game 4, which the Liberty lost by 2 and had a 9-20 free throw disadvantage, should also have an asterisk. Well, I think the difference is that it came down to that one specific play. And that's the difference. That's why it's viewed differently. That's why it feels different, is because it wasn't like a series of plays. It wasn't, a series, there are Lynx fans, and I'm sure other fans who would argue that I'm not even talking about the 25-8 disparity, right? Like, that's one thing to discuss. That's not what I'm discussing. I'm talking about that final sequence when the championship was decided. Cheryl Reeve is right. The championship was decided on that play. Shouldn't have been a foul. Probably should have been a travel. Shouldn't have been a foul. And the Lynx should be the champions. So I don't know. I can't reckon with that in my head. That one, one mistake cost them the title. It did. I don't say that with any malice for the Liberty and how hard they played either. They competed their tails off. Right? Like they played deep. As much as Sabrina sucked shooting the ball, she did compete her tail off defensively. They played to win that game. It's not that the Liberty sold themselves, right? This is an officiating thing. But the Lynx should be the champs today. Amy Thompson, no way Liberty earned the win. All one has to do is a little knowledge and eyes to see what happened. Too many people, even the professionals like LeBron, saw that the game was rigged. Well, again, I don't think it was rigged. There's a difference between it being bad and rigged. I personally don't think it was rigged. I don't really know what the benefit of it being rigged is. Like people think the ratings for that in the moment don't really matter, right? Like they already signed the media rights deal. So did they prefer New York? Probably. I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of bias there. By the way, Minneapolis is a beautiful city. I biked around like 20 miles on Saturday. But I don't think it was rigged. I just think it was bad. However, let me say this. It was bad to the degree where I understand where people were saying it was rigged. And usually I think that's complete nonsense. I came in for Caitlin and stayed to watch the finals. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of fans did, which is cool. And the opposite of what people were saying. I think the new fans are a tremendous boon to the NBA, WNBA, and no one should say otherwise. It's ridiculous at this point. Hopefully we move past that. Brett Atwood said, based on Angel's last Insta Live, I'm guessing she won't be involved in the math portion of negotiations. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about the thing about the money? Because let me say this. I didn't think Angel should have said the thing about WNBA salaries. I don't think it made her look great. But let's also, let's not be dense and real. Like when she says she can't live on her WNBA salary, it doesn't mean she doesn't have the money to pay for what she's doing. Angel is making a lot of money right now. I promise you that. Promise. Like she's got an average. Face is going to be on the Reese's thing. She's got like a Cash App thing out today. I just saw she's everywhere. Angel Reese is not hurting for money. Her endorsement deals must, crush her salary. She just didn't need to be so like, because not everybody's in her position. That's one thing, right? Like not all of her peers are in her position. And it's just not something that needed to be said in that sort of fashion to me. And it's not the end of the world, but let's also, have proper comprehension skills. It doesn't mean she can't afford her lifestyle. Janelle Jacobson says bad reffing does not mean rigged. Yeah, that's true too. I mean, we've been complaining about the refs a lot all year, right? I know Fever fans sure as hell were. Roz for the win says, I am hoping the result is better and more consistent officiating. Kevin Zwicker said, what was it like meeting Spike? So, seems like a really cool guy. I've already gotten that vibe from him, which is why I approached him. Basically, the way it works is they do on-court shoot-around and on-court interviews before the games, about an hour and a half before the game. If you have a press credential, you can go down on the court. So I was going down on the court before every game, capturing some B-roll, capturing some photos, what have you. This time it just worked out where Spike had come in pretty early. I actually took a photo of him before I approached him. And then I realized he was just sitting there, and you could walk over on the court. So I walked around, went over and said, hey, Spike, you have 60 seconds. You mind if I film it? Totally no worries if you don't. And he said he does. And that was it. And did it. And he was cordial and friendly. And, I didn't spend any additional time chopping it up with him. I'm not trying to bother the guy, but he was a pleasure. Let me put it that way. Spike Lee was a pleasure in that 90-second encounter I had with him. Starscream says up 2 with 5 seconds left on a jump ball. That's not a foregone conclusion of a loss. Where was the possession of the ball? Depends. Did the Lynx have the ball? Because then it wouldn't be a jump ball. Either way, they'd be in damn good shape. Shanna, like Hannah, says they both could have played much better, but if you're up by 2 with 5 seconds left, then she walks and you get hit with a foul call. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Again, this commenter says the refs are terrible, but it's hypocritical to only complain when your team loses. Reeves didn't give two shits about the refs when she was winning. Nobody does. But again, it's not about the refs in general. It's about that play. That's the problem. That's what makes it tough. Is it comes down to more than the refs in general. Right? Like it really, in many ways, was decided by a single play. Masher says there's just a special whistle when the commish is wearing the New York skyline. I mean, look, the New York skyline is a popular thing. She's from New York. They were in New York. Maybe she just didn't realize the optics. I doubt that was like a signal, Otherwise, she's like a Sith Lord and a supervillain, right? Like, it's just poor judgment, perhaps. DJML says if Fee wants to win championship, she should join the Fever. She would average 30 points a game playing with CC. I mean, yeah, they'd be incredible together. Nike Rawhide says, so now we have 2 top coaches in the league cussing and downgrading the officials last 2 games. Maybe they'll do something about it now before next season. I think a lot's going to change between now and next season. I really do. I think a lot's going to change because next season is now the last season of the current CBA. So I think you're going to see the tone change. I think the broadcasts have more time to prepare. The league has more time to prepare. All these things. So you're gonna. I think you're gonna see a better product, a better tone, better coverage. I would hope by next year. Mike says the whole refereeing situation should be addressed and fixed. Martel Park says, "Yo, I hate that because New York should have won Game 4, but they were cheated." Well, that was what good coaching by Sandy Brandello there. Excessive salty says, "It's bad optics for sure." I think that's in reference to the New York dress. Faraz Jamil says there wouldn't have been a Game 5 if they officiated Game 4 correctly. I mean, there wouldn't have been a Game 5 if the Liberty had just won Game 1 either, right? I mean, there's a lot of those games you could play. I just don't know if any of them come down to one play. Ernesto says, listen, it's always going to be controversy. There's a tuck rule that happened. So we should have felt bad for the Raiders. You know what doesn't get emphasized enough? That the Patriots cheated. No one seems to care anymore on numerous occasions. It's interesting. It's interesting. This has a reality TV feel to it, scripted. I mean, look, I don't think it was rigged. I don't, but I understand why people are saying it, which shows you how bad it was. Look, I want to, in my heart of hearts, I wanted to be like, New York, but it didn't feel like that. That's just the truth. Jesse Pena, yes, but it's over a couple years from now. No one's going to remember when the Kings lost to the Lakers. Yeah, in 2002, I gave up. Well, people still do remember that series, though. They remember that. You're right. I mean, they'll be the champion, but we should be talking Sabrina and Stewie and John Quell and Phoebich now, and we're not. Connect Ondo says a ring is a ring when you don't steal it. You have to play and arbitrate correctly. The final series was in favor of the Liberty. The championship was a gift. The real champions are the Lynx. Well, I don't know about that. I'm talking about the end of this game, not the whole series. Bobby Hughes says Caitlin Clark is already the best player in the WNBA. By the end of next season, she will be the best player in WNBA history. I mean, I don't actually think that's wild. As wild as it is to think that, I don't think it's wild. I don't. Caitlin Clark sure as hell played like the best player in the WNBA or right there post-Olympic break, and she should get better next year. She's definitely the best guard in the league. You know, I'm trying to be fair as far as like other people have done it a longer body of work, but I understand what you're saying. Her account says, "Can you do a video on the CBA deal later?" Sure, I can. But I can explain it for you. But real quick, I can tell it to you now. I mean, more or less. Here, let me. Since you're in here and you specifically requested that, let me show you right now, and hopefully this will answer your question because I don't actually find it to be that like surprising, or anything like that. This is not a shocking thing. It was totally expected. We all knew that the players were going to opt out of this deal. And it seems like everybody is going into it with good faith based on what even the league has put out there publicly. Here you go. All right. This is from the WNBA's account. Here's what you need to know. CBA 101. Building a league that works for the long term. Let's break it down. Okay. What's the collective bargaining agreement? An agreement between the WNBA and its owners and the WNBA PA, the labor union for players, establishes the rules of the road for the league, owners, teams, and players, governs items like salary cap, season schedule, travel, player benefits, and more. What's an opt-out? A provision in the CBA that lets either the WNBA or the WNBA PA end the CBA early, begins the negotiation process for a new CBA. Recently, the WNBA opted out, meaning the current CBA now ends after the 2025 WNBA season instead of after the 2027 WNBA season. So that's the key point right there. They chose to, in the last one, in the current CBA, they had an opt-out in there as part of the deal. They chose to enact that opt-out to get out of the CBA, which means the current collective bargaining agreement runs until the end of next season. So nothing changes for next season. It runs through the end of next season. But it was signed to run through the 2027 season. Instead, the players decided to opt out now, which was the only move they could make. What happens now? No impact on the 20, like I just said, the WNBA and WNBA PA work together on a new CBA that is fair for all and lays the foundation for growth and success for years to come. Goal, new CBA by the start of the 2026 season. So it sounds like everybody's on the same page here, which means it's probably going to get done. There are all finer details that will be argued, right? Like scheduling quirks. Brianna Stewart said it last night in the post-game presser, more or less. She said, all right, we got to figure out how to make it so we get more rest time between games. That could be something that's negotiated in there. The real truth of the CBA is that it's mostly about the rev share or the money, right? Like, and a lot of these, I think the NBA's is basically 50-50. So what's going to happen is the players are going to fight for a fairer share of the pie as they see it. And that pie is getting larger, which will then eventually lead to higher player salaries. And you've already seen the negotiations sort of play out in the media, I think, with that report that came from the New York Post about the WNBA losing money this year. It's been losing money. You know, like the NBA has subsidized it. But the article also doesn't really tell you anything because the new money has not come in yet. The money from the growth has not come in yet. And that's going to be what changes the equation, the new money that comes in. And that's going to happen. Obviously, you saw more people at the games. Obviously, you saw the media rights deal, which basically 3x'd what they were getting. More meaning what the networks were paying them to broadcast the games has gone up 3 times. And they have that locked in for 10 years or something. And they can get out of that in 3 years. Meaning in 3 years, they can opt out of that and try to negotiate better. But basically, you're going to look for the players to fight for as big a revenue share as they can get, as close to 50-50 as they can get. And then other small details that need to be worked out. But the reason the leverage for them has been this explosive growth this season. And they really, you know, Caitlin Clark in many ways should be thanked for that, if we're being real about it, as I've said. So that's more or less what's going on. Maybe I'll clip this specifically if that's helpful. But that's what's going on with the WNBA opt-out and the CBA. They opted out to start the negotiation process for a new one. I would bet they have a new CBA in place by the end of next season. There will be some negotiating back and forth through the media, behind closed doors, all that stuff. But it's really just because of the success of the league. And ultimately, both parties should benefit from the success of the league. Vonda Phillips says, what does opt-out mean? I just showed it means they had a deal in place, but part of the language for the deal was they had an opt-out where they could get out of the deal early, which they did. Katie says, I'm excited to see how all these teams get shaken up next season, and especially the season after that. Can't wait to see where players end up and who ends up playing together. Michael Martin says, if they played well, I would be more sympathetic. If the Lynx hadn't shot 37% from the field, commit 17 turnovers and get out-rebounded by 11. Well, the one thing I would say is these two teams were playing hard. There's a lot on the line. There's great defense being played. So that factors in too, into the poor shooting. Nancy Fox says, the officiating overall for the series was questioned by both head coaches. We have watched the officials stand in front of a player and refuse to make a call. Not good enough. I agree. Basil says, yes, we have been complaining about the refs all season, but it is a legit complaint, not just homerism. Darnell says, whether you agree with the foul or not, the Lynx missed opportunities before that call and an OT to win the championship. Johnny McDonald says, as a lifelong Libs fan, it finally feels good to raise the trophy. I don't feel bad about the call because it was reviewed. That's interesting too. I didn't see the TV telecast. What did they say about the review? Did they explain why it was held up? Aimser1 says, Robin, how would you compare this game to the Fever games that had similar outcome with the rest? Well, I don't think any of the Fever games was decided by the one thing. But yeah, the Fever got a rough whistle in game 2 against Connecticut. I mean, there was the closeout, the reckless closeout that should have been called on Bonner. That would have been 3 foul shots for Caitlin Clark. There was the hack Marina Mabry had on Clark that should have been a foul and wasn't, and that would have been 2 points. So the Fever lost 5 points in that game on 2 plays that I can remember. Brandon Sleep says, Sandy telling Stewie to flop was legendary. You know, that's something I hope doesn't come to the WNBA. Is it's one of the most annoying things about the NBA is the egregious flopping. It's just egregious. When players try to draw a foul instead of, make a basket. Rick T says, do you think Sabrina was tired? 1 for 19, no legs. I think part of it's maybe she was tired. The Lynx play great defense. Sabrina's not that fast. She doesn't get her own shot that well. She's a very good all-around guard. Like, Sabrina plays hard defense. She generally makes good decisions. She's a hell of a shooter. She has worked on her game in between, but she's not explosive. And I think that's really what it is. She's just not that kind of player who's just going to create for herself at least. And then she missed, she took tough shots. She missed some tough shots. Lucky for her, she made that shot. If she didn't make that shot in game 3, we'd be looking at one of the worst series from a star player we've ever seen. Parrish Duggar says, as a Fever and Caitlin fan, I say she fouled Stewie on the wrist before she hit the ball. Interesting. Robert says she did touch Stewie, but fingers that was on the ball. That's what Cheryl Reeve would call marginal contact. That's the definition of marginal contact. Two Boys in a PCA says, us here in Minnesota appreciate your opinion and objectivity. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Brandon 1050 says, I respectively disagree with that person. The game wouldn't have even been close if the referee didn't call these fake calls to get New York back in the game. 100% was fixed. Kayla Hall. On the broadcast, they said Alana Smith was not in legal guarding position. Interesting. Jose Antonio Sabater says, Ryan Rucco mentioned a couple angle where it looked like Stewie's wrist, and Lobo added it might not be enough to overturn. I mean, I guess it's the burden of proof for the overturn. I did see Rebecca Lobo on TV this morning saying it was a tough call for the Lynx. Bro Gad says, overall body of work between the regular season and playoffs makes a good case for Fee as the best player in the league. I agree. Master says Caleb McBride is also a unicorn who can either be the best defensive player on the court or the best shooter in the league. Yeah, look, shout out to her. She played great. She was really broken up in the post-game presser. Both her and Nafisa were really broken up. Just a kid from Brooklyn. What's better, having coaches and players who are honest about how they feel, or players and coaches who take the high road and stick to politically correct statements in the vein of good sportsmanship? Look, I'll take the honesty every time. And I would call it crying if there wasn't a legitimate gripe. It was kind of funny to see Sabrina like after 1 of 19. That's what Vintage Mixer says. UNESCO celebrating her 1 of 19. Michael Martin says one thing became crystal clear last night was how much better Clark is than anyone on the floor, which is saying something considering Stewie and Collier are out. Well, look, Clark is the best guard in the league. There's no question. There is absolutely no question. And I think by next year, she'll be considered the best player in the league. I do. And On says honesty all day. Eddie Hargett says, I feel it's redemption for game 1 missed free throw. Well, look, Stewie missed 2 other free throws in this game. But, I mean, for missing a free throw, you shouldn't get redemption. You know, just for missing a free throw. Hold on 1 second, guys. All right. Where are we at? Yeah. Albert Jimenez, I'm glad to see Robin Lundberg on YouTube since I've been in a long time from his days at ESPN Radio. Thanks for following me all these years. Robert says if the current CBA runs until the end of next season, the new one will start with the new TV deal, so there should be changes. Well, look, you're going to see a lot of short-term deals signed by players. You will see a lot of short-term deals signed by players because they're trying to capitalize on that coming in. BG1723G says, if you actually think CC is better than Fee or Stewie, you are delusional. Even thinking she will be the best player in the WNBA next year is delusional. I don't think so. I don't think that's delusional at all. She was top 4 in MVP this year. She was first team all WNBA. So as of this year, she was a top 5 player in the league, her rookie season. So to say she improves, how do you improve from the 4th best player in the league by the MVP voting? There's only 3 spots left. Not to say that she will definitely be the best, but it's certainly not delusional. Bro Gad makes a strong point. Clark would have to improve immensely on the defensive end to be the best player in the league. Look, I think that's an area she'll have to improve some. I don't think she's as bad defensively as people make it out to be. Brandon Sleep, I was happy for you that you got to meet Spike. Thank you. Thank you guys all for the support. I've repeated that a bunch throughout the series. Scottish Jason says, never heard of employees getting revenue share instead of profit share. Well, that's the way most of these sports leagues work. Is what it is. That's like the precedent for most of these sports leagues. So there you have it. Oh, all right, guys. I wanted to get a live in today. Like I said, I wasn't home until 4, 5 in the morning. So I'm going to get out of here in a second. Throw in any other comments you got. Eddie Hargett says, I adore Nafisa Collier game, defense and offense overall. Starscream says, do you think next year the Liberty or Fever will attract more top-tier free agent? Fever have the star power, but Liberty have the money and facilities. Well, the money only counts with the salary cap. I think both are attractive destinations. I think those are maybe the two most attractive destinations in the sport. Vegas is up there too, considering it seems like the city does what they can to grease the palms. But I think those are the two most attractive destinations in the sport. I mean, look at the deals that Lexi Hull is in, like commercials and stuff, you know. LBW says, get a haircut. I'm going bald. I don't know what that means, bro. or miss, or whoever. I don't know what that means. Bobby Yu says, offense is so much more important than defense. The best player only has to be decent at defense if they're by far the best offensive player in the league. Well, also, if they're responsible for as much as Clark is responsible for, it's hard to have this standard of them also being a defensive maestro. I mean, Luka Doncic is in the best player in the NBA conversations, and he's certainly not a stalwart on defense. Master says, appreciate you as always, Robin. Appreciate all of y'all. And adds, hit that like and help me out. Yeah, like, subscribe. Obviously, the channel's not going anywhere. We're only growing from here. We'll be covering women's college basketball, the WNBA offseason, anything else that I decide makes sense to get involved in and talk about. My other passion. We'll figure it out. It's my channel, so I can put whatever the hell I want on it. Also, women's fast break on SI. Make sure you're checking that out. AJ says, how would the WNBA actually go about improving the officiating? Love your content. Review the officials more. Be selective in who's doing the games. You can always pay more for people to do better work, generally. Standards, again, make them meet certain standards. The WNBA, the NBA has a very thorough process to evaluate officials. Most sports leagues do. Officials always get blamed for things. So you don't want to go over the top and overboard. But now that this is a serious league, they need to take everything seriously. And it's not, a magic wand that you wave. It's, okay, bring in the officials who have been the most successful, gotten the most calls right, compensate them better, train them better, evaluate them better, all those things. Eric Ragukas says, I love watching you. Thanks for being the most articulate and knowledgeable in the business. Cheers. You know what? That's very nice. That is very nice. And I think I'm going to end on that comment because it ain't going to get any better or nicer than that. All right, I need to rest up a little bit, y'all. I'll be back with another live this week for sure. Make sure you continue to check out the channel. And until next time, yeet.